We're setting all kinds of records this playoffs. Is Buffalo going to win the AFC East this year? They're pretty fucking good so far.
The Cincinnati Bearcats are the 11th best team in the country?
Yeah, no way.
Are you fucking shitting me?
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of the Slightly Sideways podcast, episode 13. I'm your host, Koenig, joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Corbin. Say hello to the people, Corbin.
Hello, everybody. Episode 13. Unfortunately, we are not recording this on Friday the 13th because that would be really cool, but 13th episode nonetheless. We are actually recording this episode on a Wednesday, so an earlier recording than we normally do on our Friday. As you guys all know, here on Slightly Sideways, we do like to have some drinks as we go through the sports topics for the upcoming and following week. Today, I have on my end Michelob Ultra Pure Gold. Now, this is beer. I told you I was going to alternate between beer and seltzers going forward, just for health-conscious purposes. But this is it's an organic light lager, and it only has 2.5 carbs and 85 calories. So we'll see how the taste goes. I normally like Michelob Ultra, but I have never tried the Ultra Pure Gold. We'll see how this shapes out. Koenig, what do you have on your end?
Like Corbin said, normally we record on Friday nights, and it allows me to kind of go to the market and pick something up. But here on a Wednesday night, I kind of had to go through the refrigerator and just pick out whatever was available. So on my end tonight, at a Silver City Brewery here in Bremerton, Washington, I know Corbin's a big fan of the Seattle market beers.
Oh, here we go.
At a Silver City Brewery, I'm going with Ziggy Zoggy Summer Lager. And I've had this, I think, once before on the show. But as always, we will be giving our drink reviews at the end of the show tonight, so stay tuned for that. It is going to be a little bit more subdued than usual. We won't be putting back 6 beers each, obviously, since this is a Wednesday night. Corbin's going to be traveling out of town this weekend. So we wanted to make sure we got in an episode for you people. But before we get into tonight's show, if you aren't already, give us a follow on Twitter at Slightly Sideway. If you have any feedback or suggestions for what you'd like us to discuss on later episodes, you can email our show at slightlysidewayspod@gmail.com. If you're on Spotify, if you have a Spotify subscription, you can follow our podcast at Slightly Sideways Podcast. Give us a follow on there. We'd really appreciate that. And to our community on YouTube, give our video a like if you're enjoying the show. Subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free to subscribe. You won't miss a single episode. It'll go straight to your inbox on YouTube. And thank you as always to our loyal listeners and viewers for your continued support of our program. We really appreciate it. On tonight's show, we have a wrap-up of the NBA Finals. It's finally over, thank God. We have an update from the Major League Baseball Championship Series. What else do we have on the show tonight, Corbin?
We also have NFL Week 5 wrap-up, college football Week 6 wrap-up, and everybody's favorite segment, The Unknown. This week, I will be in charge of The Unknown, so you want to make sure that you stick around to the end of the episode to see what Koenig has to go through this week. But we will start with the NBA Finals. As Koenig alluded to, we do have a champion, to not much shock from really anybody who follows basketball. The Los Angeles Lakers are the 2019-2020 NBA champions. They took down the Miami Heat in Game 6, 106-93, to win that series 4-2. This game really wasn't close at all. To kind of put things into perspective, in the fourth quarter, the Heat outscored the Lakers 35-19, and they still lost by 13 points. So, again, this game, it was pretty much over after the first 5 minutes. Really anticlimactic. I feel like everybody more or less thought that the Lakers were going to come out and they were done toying with the Heat. It's a miracle this series got to Game 6 in the first place, if you ask most basketball fans. But the Lakers do what we all expected. They close out the Heat. They win their championship. Koenig, was there any doubt in this series, even when it was 3-2?
No, not really. I feel like the games that the Lakers won, they absolutely dominated from basically beginning to end. And then you kind of had a couple games where Jimmy Butler played his ass off. He had to play like 47 minutes, I think, in one game, and he had 2 triple-doubles. and the Miami Heat just barely squeaked out those games. And so I know on our end we were calling for a sweep when it was 2-0 in that series. And credit to Jimmy Butler, he's a phenomenal player. He did everything he could to try to carry the Miami Heat in that series. But ultimately, it was too much. It was like we said going into that series. The Lakers have too many pieces, they have too much talent, and Miami just couldn't compete with that.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that this is going to be the easiest championship that LeBron will ever win. And how I mean that is the path of the playoffs and how they got there. They didn't have to play a Warriors team that, obviously due to injuries this year, the Warriors were terrible. They didn't make the playoffs. So the Lakers didn't have to worry about that. Lakers got lucky in the postseason. They didn't have to match up with the Clippers, who completely bombed against the Denver Nuggets. I mean, let's face it. I think the Clippers are a better team than the Nuggets are, but didn't break down like that. The Nuggets pulled that series out. And then they got to match up with a number 5 seed from the East. And not to knock the Heat, because credit to the Heat, they played well when they had to, but they were no threat for the Lakers. LeBron James and Anthony Davis were clearly the 2 best players on the floor, and it wasn't even close after that. When you've got the 2 best players on the floor by far, unless you get ejected or you the other team just miraculously shoots lights out, you're not going to lose, especially in a 7-game series. A lot of kind of pushback on LeBron, some people in favor, some people not after the game. LeBron James has given his post-game speech talking about, we did this for our fans, did this for Kobe, did this for whatever, Laker Nation. And he's kind of saying like, oh, well, we did this, we want our respect. And he goes, and I want my damn respect too. Essentially referring to the fact that, like, in his mind, people think that they dog him, saying that he's not the greatest player in the world ever. Koenig, what do you think of the quote from LeBron, him saying, I want my damn respect? Do you think he's the best player of all time?
I actually have a bit of a lengthy rant on this for the people.
Ooh, baby.
So we'll start with the quotes. And this is like my biggest complaint on basketball. LeBron, in this moment, forget everything else that happened this season and in his career. In this moment, LeBron is a total ass clown saying, I want my damn respect too. I'm a firm believer in the fact that there's a time and a place for everything, and this was just not the time or the place for LeBron to go on boasting about himself or to go on tooting his own horn or trying to, do whatever he wants to do and promote his narrative. It's, like I said before, just another reason why I hate the fucking NBA. It's, out of all of the sports, it's the least quote-unquote team sport I think there is. It's just a bunch of fucking individuals that just play together. I don't consider that to be a team sport.
Yeah.
And so you win this championship, and some of the players on your team, this is the first ever championship they've ever won. You talk about a guy like Anthony Davis, who's played at a phenomenal level his entire career. It's his first championship. And instead of making this moment maybe about them and promoting those guys, it's all about LeBron all the time. You had your own special on ESPN just to announce that you could go down to South Beach and team up with Dwayne Wade and the dinosaur Chris Bosh. And so
to win like 7 championships, remember?
Yeah, because he was going to win 7 times, not 1, not 2, not 3, etc., etc. And so it's always about LeBron, and I fucking hate it. It's like, just once, I want it to not be about you. And on the topic of that, he says this quote, I want my damn respect. You want your respect, LeBron? Try having a winning record in the finals, dude.
Oh!
Try winning a championship without having to form a super team. If you were all that and sliced bread, you would have won in Cleveland with the Cavs before you left to go team up with Miami. But you didn't. You went and you formed with all those other dudes so that you could have an easier road. And Corbin asked the question, is he the greatest in the world? All time? No. Easily answered? No. I would say he's top 3. I still think that LeBron is in the shadow of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Both of them. I think I would take both of those guys over him easily. And I'll break it down like this. Michael Jordan went to the finals, the NBA finals, 6 times in his career, and he won all 6 times. Michael Jordan never lost in the finals. Kobe Bryant went to the finals 7 times, and he won 5 times. So Kobe is 5-2 in the NBA Finals. He's won 71% of the time. We do the math for you here. And now you have LeBron, who wins the NBA Finals 40% of the time at 4-6. So never mind the fact that Jordan and Kobe both have more rings than LeBron, which I don't necessarily know if rings is a solid indicator of success in the NBA. But nonetheless, you have 2 guys that have a higher success rate in the finals and more championships than you. So, are you the best current player in the league? Yeah, I think we could give LeBron that, if that's what he wants, if that's the respect he's looking for. But to say that you're the best player of all time, get the fuck out of here, dude.
My take on it is there's no doubt that LeBron James is one of the best talents that we've ever seen. There's just no question. Just his size, his ability, what he does on the court. He's a mismatch nightmare for just about anybody who has to guard him. But like you mentioned, I don't really think anybody's questioning how good of a basketball player LeBron James is. Everybody knows that he's one of the all-time great basketball players. But for him, it seems like the only way that I can show that I'm the best is if I have all these championships. And so, after he couldn't win in Cleveland however many times in a row, I'm sure he said to himself, damn, like my legacy is going to be tarnished unless I start winning some championships and start winning some championships fast. And then, of course, he jumped ship out of Cleveland to go to Miami to win 2 in Miami. Honestly, if not for a Ray Allen miracle 3 from the corner against the Spurs, he'd be 3 for 7 right now in NBA Finals. So let's not forget that. He goes down to Miami. He wins 2 championships, pairing up with his 2 superstar buddies, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, which when he left, he kind of left the Cavaliers hanging to the point where they were terrible, and they ended up getting the number 1 pick and getting Kyrie Irving. So the only reason he went back to Cleveland was he was like, Kyrie's there. That's a budding superstar. There's me who could go back there. And then, they figured a way to get Kevin Love to get traded to the team. So then, boom, he had his big 3 again, right? So he goes back to Cleveland and they win. And honestly, you could argue that championship that they won in Cleveland when Draymond Green got suspended for one of the games in the finals, you could argue that if he would have played in that game, because I think weren't the Warriors up like 3-1 in that series? And the Cavs had made a big comeback. Now, credit to the Cavs, they came back and they won. But again, like these are things that you kind of have to keep in mind where, yes, he's got 4 championships, but there were instances where he could maybe have 2. And then we're definitely not having this conversation. But again, he goes to Cleveland once the path is created for him again to win, and then goes to LA. And what's great? This is a good comparison. So you were saying that you think Kobe is a better player than LeBron all time. And that's a tough debate in itself. I don't want to say yes or no either way. But the fact remains that Kobe Bryant had chances when the Lakers were dog shit to jump out if he wanted to. There were years where Kobe Bryant was playing with like Smush Parker and Kwame Brown and like Luke Walton. I mean, there was teams that he had that were awful. And you know what? Kobe could have just said, fuck it, I'm out of here. Like, I'm going to go pair up with whoever and win some championships. And he didn't. And he stayed the course and ended up winning championships after the fact. Now, albeit the roster's improved, but again, he didn't have to go to his superstar buddies and say, hey, let's all get together to win these championships, where everywhere that LeBron has gone, he's had to. LeBron's first season in LA, the roster was poor and the team sucked. Not even LeBron, especially in the West. In the Eastern Conference, LeBron could piggyback his team to the finals because the East was so terrible. Last year, when they missed the playoffs completely, they were one of the worst teams in the league. And this year, boom, as soon as they get Anthony Davis, it's completely flipped over. They go from being one of the worst teams in the league to obviously NBA champions. So people aren't questioning, yeah, LeBron, like physically you're a tremendous player and you do things on the court that we haven't seen from most players. I don't think people deny that. It's just the way in how he's getting his championships. And he's trying to say, oh, since I have these 4 championships, this further validates my place in the greatest players of all time, when there's a lot more to it than just saying, oh, yeah, I won 4 championships. Like Koenig, like you mentioned, you've lost 6 and you could have potentially lost 8 if not for a couple lucky breaks that went your way along the way. And again, you had to pair up with your homies every step of the way to win.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So then you have this guy in the post game, and it was like Corbin said, your team was terrible last year, and you were on that team, dude. And your team was terrible. And if you were so great, you would have at least made the playoffs last year, right?
Yeah.
But you weren't.
Albeit he was injured for a good chunk of that season. But even then, even when he was healthy, the team was barely struggling to fight for an 8 seed. It wasn't good news, that's for sure.
For sure. It goes back to my previous point is you want to make this moment all about you, when in actuality, the difference maker for your team this year was Anthony Davis and his first ever championship. And you could have used this opportunity to put him on a pedestal and really celebrate his accomplishments and what he did for you. Because let's face it, dude, all the pundits and everybody on ESPN that's swinging from this guy's ball sack, they're not going to be talking about Anthony Davis. Everyone is talking about LeBron because he's the face of the franchise right now. And it very easily could have been a moment like, no, LeBron, you're fantastic, you're a great player, but this isn't your moment. You weren't the difference maker, in my eyes anyways. It was the addition of this key piece that led you to where you got. And it sucks that I don't feel as though, I mean, Anthony Davis got his face time, don't get me wrong, but I feel as though LeBron tried to like take over the scene, and I didn't appreciate that.
Yeah, it was definitely a me factor out there. And you know what? I just think he's always going to have that insecurity, LeBron, no matter how many championships he wins. He's just always going to have that insecurity of people who are saying, well, you've lost so many finals before and you've had to pair up with your buddies to do this. As far as going forward, LeBron James is 36 and still playing tremendous basketball. Yes. I mean, you would never guess that he's a 36-year-old out there playing. You have to think, if he can stay healthy, he's got at least 2-3 more seasons playing elite level basketball. And obviously Anthony Davis is in his prime right now. Those two together, like we mentioned previously, it only takes a couple superstars to have success in the league. Now, Kane, going forward, the Warriors ideally would get healthier. And who knows, other teams in the West and the Eastern Conference who get better. Brooklyn's going to be better next year in the East as far as a potential contender in the finals with Kevin Durant and Kyrie. How many championships do you see going forward from here for the Lakers while LeBron is still in his prime? Do you think this is it, that the one that they just got is it, or do you see more?
So LeBron, as far as I know, has 3 years remaining on his 4-year deal with the Lakers, if I remember correctly.
Sounds about right.
And so I think he'll finish out that contract, and I would be very surprised to see him sign elsewhere or extend or even sign like a 1-year deal somewhere else or go back to Cleveland. Who knows?
Yeah.
But out of the 3 years left in LA, I still think they have a lot of really good pieces. Obviously, Anthony Davis is there. He's in his prime. Rondo, I don't know what the future holds for Rondo, but I mean, he was a huge factor, and especially in that closeout game, Game 6, Rajon Rondo played very well. I could easily see them winning another championship. I don't think this is going to be a not 1, not 2, not 3. I don't think it's going to be that. I think they'll win one more. I don't think it'll be next year. I don't think they'll necessarily go back to back. I do think that the Clippers might add some pieces, and they'll be right back in the mix next year, along with the Warriors. The Pacific is very tough. So in 3 years, I think it's fair to say LeBron has it in him to win another one, but I don't think it'll be multiple. Corbin, what do you think?
I think that's where I'm lying right now. I do think it'll be back-to-back, though. I think the time to win is now. Again, he's not getting any younger. Not to say that he's just going to completely fall off a cliff here after this next season, but another year of chemistry with him and Anthony Davis. They'll find a way to put some pieces around him. As long as they stay healthy, I could definitely see them winning one for sure. After that, we'll see. LeBron's going to be pushing 38 years old. Who knows where Anthony Davis will be at that time? You just never know with these players these days, right? Players say, like, I really love where I'm at right now. And then a year or two later, they're on their second or third team. So, it's hard to tell what's going to happen in the future. But I think they've got one left in them. But that's it for the NBA season. Thank God. I think we just all knew the Lakers. Yeah, we all knew the Lakers were going to win, and it was a foregone conclusion. Now that they have won, give praise to Laker Nation. Congratulations for Kobe Bryant and the Kobe Bryant supporters out there. It was cool that they won for him. But Moving on, we will go into a sport that is currently being played right now. We have the MLB playoff update. We have the championship series that are currently taking place. In the National League, we have the Atlanta Braves, who are up 2-1 over the Los Angeles Dodgers. There was quite the shellacking in Game 3 today, which we will get to in just a moment. And we have the Tampa Bay Rays, who are up 3-1 over the Houston Astros. The Astros were able to win today 4-3 in order to not get swept. Koenig, with the current series where they're at, are there any surprises? Did you think that Tampa Bay could maybe sweep Houston today?
I think Houston's got too much experience to get swept. Like I said, this is their fourth consecutive championship series. So this is a team that knows how to win. They're competitors. Some people might say they're cheaters too, but this is a team that at the end of the day, they have a bunch of dogs on their team, and they're not going to go lightly. And I knew they wouldn't. And I know that Tampa Bay threw out their ace tonight. They tried to finish it off and get guys rested and healthy. But credit to the Astros. They were able to stave off elimination, so they lived to fight another day. I don't think that they'll win the series. I personally think that Tampa Bay should be able to finish it off. I don't even think it'll go 7 games. I just think Tampa Bay's pitching has been so dominant in this series. I think that eventually the Astros will run out of pitchers in order to kind of limit the Tampa Bay offense.
Yeah, I think Tampa Bay is going to close it out in Game 5. I can't tell you how or why. I just have a hunch that they're going to just close it out. They're not going to give Houston any breathing room, any hope in this series. Don't want to have another Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees 2004, where the Astros come back being down 3-0 in a 7-game series. So the Rays, I mean, they had chances today too. They only lost by 1 run. It's not like they got blown out today. They were very much in that game. I've been really impressed with the composure of the Rays. They've been playing a lot of really tight games and just not beating themselves, not making the errors, letting teams like the Astros make those errors for them. Jose Altuve has been an absolute nightmare in the postseason so far. He's got 4 throwing errors in 9 games. And even before that, the guy had batted .219 in 48 games this season, which, you know, this is a Jose Altuve, a guy who's usually batting .320, .330, .340 on the year. You know, he usually leads the league in hits. Koenig, what is going on with Altuve? What do you make of that?
Altuve is really not doing himself any favors, trying to distance himself from this whole cheating scandal. I will say that. This is a guy who was probably the best hitter, or at least one of the best hitters in baseball the last few years. He won the American League MVP in 2017. He somehow beat Aaron Judge for that award, where some Yankee fans are still bitching about that Aaron Judge should have won. And I was one of those. I think Aaron Judge should have won MVP, but he didn't. Yeah. Altuve won in 2017, and he hit .346 with 24 home runs. And this is a guy in Jose Altuve that led the league in hits every year from 2014 to 2017. He's the only player in the history of Major League Baseball to do that. Lead the league 4 consecutive years in hits. And then this dude goes from that guy consistently batting over .330, and now he's batting .219. And this comes right off of this whole cheating scandal news where you're getting buzzed in what the pitches are going to be. Dude, that's a bad look for you, man. You go from one of the most efficient hitters in all of baseball to barely batting your weight. That is not good.
It's one of 2 things that I can point to. It's either this cheating scandal was really real, and now that he doesn't have his crutch to fall back on, he's suffering from that, or he's just so in his head about his legacy and this scandal that he just can't get out of his own mind, right? Like, he can't focus on playing baseball. It's always in the back of his mind that fans are going to see him as this cheater. And this guy who had success during a time where there's a lot of controversy. And what's wild is there's no fans this year, and this guy is playing like shit. So again, it's either this guy's in his head, or he was benefiting off of the whole trash can banging scandal. But It's going to be really, really interesting to see how this guy plays once fans are back, because you know that people aren't going to forget this overnight, right?
Yeah.
It's not like this season is going to go by and everyone's going to be like, oh, yeah, you know, the Astros scandal. We forgot about that. No, like fans are going to be even more vicious and brutal. This guy's 30 years old. It's not like he's old. 30 is still the prime for most baseball players. So for him just to fall off a cliff the way he is, especially for a contact hitter, I mean, I can understand if like the power numbers go down, and even so, he's not really a power hitter. He's 5'6", and he's just a contact hitter. To see that average dip nearly 100 points in a season, albeit a shortened season, but it's something to definitely pay mind to. And it's not even at the plate. Like I said, in this postseason series alone, he's missing routine throws, turning double plays at second base or throwing runners out at first. Something is up with the guy. If I had to bet, I would say that he's just in his head with this whole cheating scandal, and it's just kind of like tearing him apart inside. But it's definitely noticeable.
I have a more negative outlook. I just feel like, yeah, you were caught for it in 2017, but it really has me scratching my head like, how long was this going on before you got caught?
Yeah,
Before
yeah,
it became a thing?
yeah.
And for how far he fell off from being a 300 plus hitter over 4, 5, 6 seasons, right? And over 162 games, by the way, batting over 300, over 330. And then, boom, this news comes out, and like Corbin said, you fall off a cliff. It's like, how much of those numbers from your previous seasons are legitimate? It really makes you start to wonder, are all of your career numbers legit? Was it all, how many of those years were you cheating for? Was it just 2017? Was it potentially years before that? We don't know. But just with how much he has struggled this year, me being kind of a conspiracy theorist about it, it kind of makes me think like, this doesn't add up to me. This is more than just, oh, he's in his head, or oh, he's having an off year. This is, no, you don't want to be a repeat offender, and so you don't want to rely on these things that helped you be successful in years past. So that's kind of my take on it.
It'll be so interesting to see, because I thought before this whole cheating scandal that Altuve would eventually be a surefire Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I mean, just as far as hitting average, he's one of the best that we've seen in the last decade. But now it's like, is he going to get categorized as like a Mark McGwire or like a Barry Bonds, like a guy who maybe he didn't take steroids, but he cheated the system, he cheated the game, a Pete Rose kind of player? Is this going to affect that? I'm kind of cynical, and I kind of like the fact that he's performing so poorly, because what they did, I think, was absolutely terrible. And the fact that they got literally no punishment for it, or no real punishment for it,
Slap on the wrist.
yeah, pisses me off. So you know what? Like, if this is the root of the problems, and this is why this guy's playing so terrible, then like, should have thought about that before you decided to cheat, dude. So more on that as that series unfolds. Again, Tampa Bay is up 3-1 over Houston in a 7-game series. The Atlanta Braves in the National League Championship Series were up 2-0 on the Dodgers, and were more or less shutting the Dodgers out, and had me a little worried, because I was boasting about the Dodgers having this big offense and that they'd be able to handle the Braves pitching, and the Dodgers pitching would do enough to win them that series. And albeit Clayton Kershaw's, his starts have been getting pushed back, and say what you want about Kershaw, but he is an experienced player. Doesn't necessarily have the greatest track record in the playoffs, but something to note that he hasn't been playing. He's going to pitch game 4 from what it sounds like, but in game 3, the Dodgers went off. The Dodgers score 11 runs in the first inning, which is a postseason record, end up winning the game handily 15-3. Koenig, after game 3, does it have you a little worried on your Atlanta prediction?
I'm worried from the standpoint of the fact that Atlanta used a lot of their pitching tonight. Kyle Wright goes out there, he gives up, I think it was 7 or 8 runs in 2/3 of an inning,
Yeah.
and that places a huge stress on your bullpen. And I've been one that's been showing this whole time how much I think of the Braves bullpen. I think they have the best bullpen in baseball. I still think that. But when you go a game, you go in game 3, and your starter can't even get out of the first inning, that taxes your bullpen. Those guys aren't stretched out to pitch all those innings. And so now what happens as you look ahead into the series is you're going to need one hell of an effort from your starter in game 4 because all those guys that pitched in game 3,
Yeah.
most of them are not going to be available in game
They need
4.
they need minimum 6 innings from their starter in game 4.
Yeah, easily. And so Kyle Wright has a stinker. He didn't have a great game, but to Atlanta's credit, they turn it over to the bullpen that's been fairly successful all year, and the Dodgers, after the second inning, they only get one run for the rest of the game. So I still believe in the Braves. I think obviously game 4 is a pivotal game in this series. I think if Atlanta finds a way to get through it, maybe Kershaw's start gets pushed back, or maybe we see the Kershaw of years past and he lays an egg. I think if the Braves win game 4, that's pretty much the end of the series. They can pretty much wrap it up from there. But obviously, if the Dodgers take game 4, baseball is an interesting game because it's all about momentum, right? And so the Braves are riding that momentum, and then boom, they hit a brick wall today. That's what happens when you lose 15-3 in the playoffs. And
Yeah.
so now all the momentum is in the Dodgers dugout. So if they can get hot, they rattle off a couple wins, they could ride that momentum all the way to a championship. That's just how baseball is sometimes. When you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. And so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Game 4, I think, is must-see television. I still think that you have this really intriguing matchup between Atlanta's pitching and LA's offense. Atlanta got the better of them in the first 2 games. The Dodgers clearly got the better of the Braves in game 3. Corbin, what are your thoughts looking ahead for the rest of the series?
I think this is a huge wake up for Dodgers pitching, and also obviously for their offense to show, okay, like we can put up runs against this pitching staff and these relievers. They lose game 1 5-1. I mean, let's face it, you're not going to win hardly any games in the postseason scoring 1 run. Allowing 5 runs, it's not atrocious, but it's not great. I mean, when you give up 5 runs in a postseason game, I would probably lean toward you're going to lose that game. Game 2, it was 8-3 Braves going into the 9th inning, and credit to the Dodgers, they scored 4 runs in the 9th inning to get it to 8-7, and they had a runner on third, I believe, to potentially tie the game. Ended up grounded out. They couldn't pull it off. They lose 8-7, but again, not going to win many games giving up 8 runs to your opposition. This game, they just, the offense just said, to hell with it. We're going to fucking handle this shit, right? And they scored 15 runs. But the pitching did very well. They allowed 3 runs, which not bad. Like, especially when you're scoring 15 runs, you're not gonna lose. But I think this is the Dodgers offense saying to their pitching, okay, we can put up the runs needed, but we need more performances like this, where you're allowing 3 or less runs in a game in order to give us a chance. And like you said, game 4 is going to be everything. I think whoever wins game 4 is going to win the series. If the Dodgers win, I could see the Dodgers going on a run and winning 4 straight if they win game 4. If the Braves win, like you said, it's so tough to win 3 games in a row, especially in the postseason. Has it been done before? Yes, but I'm not going to bet on that. Within the Dodgers organization or the clubhouse, the offense has pushed all their chips over to their pitching and said, okay, let's go. Let's see it. So we'll see. I'm hoping that Kershaw can pitch game 4 because it'll just kind of add to the drama, and we'll see how well he can pitch, especially with his lack of success in the postseason in years past. But whoever wins game 4, I'm calling it, is going to win that series.
Stay tuned to the channel. We will have a World Series preview probably at this time for our show next week. So we'll be able to let you guys know who survived in the championship series and have our thoughts on the World Series. We do want to transition topics and talk about the NFL, the National Football League. So far, after 5 weeks of football, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Tennessee Titans, the Green Bay Packers, and the Seattle Seahawks still undefeated. The notable loss from this week of teams to fall out of the undefeated realm was the Kansas City Chiefs. The ever so mighty Kansas City Chiefs lose at home in front of their crowd, I guess you could say, to the Las Vegas Raiders. And my initial reaction to that game is I think I was surprised, not necessarily in the fact that Kansas City lost. I obviously knew they were going to lose, but I wasn't convinced it was going to be the Raiders to do it. I didn't necessarily think that it was going to be one of these winnable games that was going to catch them off guard. What I will say about the Chiefs, briefly, is I think that the Patriots really exposed Kansas City a couple weeks ago. I think that the Patriots were very much in that game, and this was with Brian Hoyer and Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. I think if Cam Newton plays, I think that they probably win that game. Brian Hoyer, he gets sacked at the end of the half. We miss out on at least 3 points there. We're in the red zone later on in that game. He fumbles the ball. It leads to Jarrett Stidham coming in, who didn't do a whole lot better. They tried to outduel each other for who sucked more, and I think Patriots fans lost. So I think that, we were talking about the third quarter of a Patriots-Chiefs game, and the Patriots, without arguably their best offensive player in Cam Newton, are right in that game. So I think that there's something to be said for what they were doing defensively. I think it's fair to say that other teams are going to kind of say, I see. And they're going to start to incorporate some of these plays or concepts into their defensive schemes to try and slow Mahomes down.
For the Kansas City Chiefs, going back to week 2, if I can, when they played the Los Angeles Chargers, that was the first game where I kind of said to myself, like, okay, maybe this Chiefs team isn't as wonderful as maybe we had initially predicted. I think preseason we were obviously we were very high on them being returning Super Bowl champions. I think we had predicted them like 13-3, 14-2, very, very high, thinking that, like, okay, well, they'll lose one here on a whim and then maybe one late when they have the playoffs sewn up. But that's a game against the Chargers, against a rookie quarterback in Justin Herbert, that the Chiefs had to win in overtime on a field goal. That was the eye-opener to me, to be like, okay, maybe this team isn't as wonderful as maybe we had thought. And it was only a matter of time before this caught up with them, because, again, on offense, they had like spurts where they'd play really well and then not so great, and then their defense would have their lapses as well. Pretty much the formula to be beaten in the NFL. And I feel like the Raiders are a team that's a total wild card this year. Some games that they play, they look really awesome, and then there's other games that they play where you're like, yep, this is the Raiders we all know, right? Yep. And people will blame Derek Carr. What's crazy about Raider fans is when the Raiders are playing well, they love Derek Carr. And when the Raiders are playing poorly, they hate Derek Carr. So no matter how well or how terrible they're doing, it's Derek Carr's fault. So just remember that for future episodes. But a lot of people are surprised that the Raiders beat the Chiefs, and I wasn't. The Chiefs have looked beatable for the most part this season. There's been games like when they played Baltimore where they looked impressive and they took care of business. But Koenig, like you mentioned, the Patriots game, that's a game that could have swung the Patriots' way if they had, say, Cam Newton playing that game. I still think that the Chiefs are going to be a favorite to come out of the AFC. Sure. It's still really early in the season. They've got improvements they need to make, and so does every team in the NFL. But kind of shock value. Most casual NFL fans were surprised by that. Another really big game that occurred just yesterday, our Tuesday night football.
Yeah.
Thank you to coronavirus, was the Tennessee Titans versus the Buffalo Bills, the battle of two undefeated teams. I know a lot of people are really high on the Bills this year, and a lot of people were surprised by the Titans. Koenig, what was your expectation of this game going in, and give everybody the result of this game?
So this is a game on Tuesday Night Football. I had very low expectations going into the game. These games that don't happen on Sunday or even Monday night, the Thursday night games and this weird Tuesday night game, I feel like you don't always get the best football. So I expected it to be fairly close, fairly low scoring, but credit to the Tennessee Titans because they absolutely trounced the Buffalo Bills. They win Tuesday Night Football in the Battle of the Unbeatens 42-16.
Smoked them.
Beat the brakes off of them, which I thought was fantastic. I, for one, honestly didn't ever fully buy into the Bills. I predicted them in our preview show to finish just above 500. I think I predicted them at 9-7 or something in the ballpark of that, and I still think that's where they'll end up by the end of the season. Despite starting the year 4-0, I still think they'll finish 9-7. I just don't think the Bills' defense is very good. If you're going to leave it in the arm of Josh Allen and say, okay, Josh Allen, go out there and outscore teams, because that's what Buffalo has to do, because their defense is very whatever. It's very average. And in the NFL, I personally don't think that Josh Allen is the guy to to say, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to try to just outscore everybody. He's got a new weapon there and Stephon Diggs and everything, and that's fine. But I don't trust a Josh Allen to be the guy to say, okay, we're going to be in a shootout. We need you to score 40 points. I don't think Josh Allen is that guy. And so I really saw their start at 4-0 as more of a product of their weak-ish schedule. They didn't really play too tough of games. I know that they had a win against the Rams, but I really don't think that the Rams are very good. They had a win against the Raiders, who are hot and cold, right? They're hot when they play the Chiefs, and they're cold the other half of their games. So both of those teams I don't have a whole lot of stock into. So for the Bills, it's like, yeah, you were 4-0. You beat a couple of bottom feeder teams and a couple of hot and cold teams, depending on the sun, the moon, the stars, the rotation of the earth. And I guess my whole perspective was it was just kind of like wait and see with this defense. Like, wait and see, does the defense have enough to keep teams off the board where a guy like Josh Allen can do just enough to win games? And I think what we saw on Tuesday Night Football was no, the defense is not good.
I think this is actually more of the tale of the Titans. And this is a defense that essentially was rock solid to the playoffs last year that got them to the AFC Championship game. And they're just a team that they're going to run the ball down your throats with Derrick Henry. Tannehill is going to do enough just not to lose the game, and the defense is just going to play lights out. They're going to be consistent. And especially in the NFL where the talent is so close to each other from roster to roster, consistency is everything. And I was really impressed with the Titans. And again, like you had mentioned, I think the Bills are a good team. I don't think the Bills are a great team. And this game showed it. I'm not even too convinced that the Titans are a great team yet, but they were clearly the better team in that matchup. And that defense, they call them the fighting vegans. Apparently, I think it's the entire defense is on a vegan diet. And this is dating back to last season. And I don't know, I don't know the science behind it, but all I know is that from last season to this season, that defense has been pretty freaking good. So I'm curious to see kind of how the Titans go going forward. Again, they're one of the last 4 undefeated teams. It's kind of well known that me and Koenig both agree that Seattle is the best current undefeated team that's remaining. But besides Seattle, Koenig, between the Steelers, Titans, and Packers, who do you think is the best team in football right now?
It's definitely the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers has had a fantastic season to this point without the viable weapons on offense. We went into this season on our preview and prediction saying, yeah, Aaron Rodgers, he's a great player, but this is an opportunity for the Packers to go out and get him some weapons on offense. Credit to Aaron Rodgers. He's doing it without those weapons. He's doing it without those guys, and it really makes you wonder how much better they would be if they did go out and get those guys. But you look at a guy also, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is having a really good year also. He's amassed over 350 yards with 4 touchdowns through 4 weeks of the season. Then you have Aaron Rodgers doing what he does best. He's thrown for over 1,200 yards and 13 touchdowns in 4 weeks. So you throw all those things together. You have a great running game. You have a great passing game, a great quarterback. The defense just has to do enough for the Packers to win, and they are winning, and they're throwing up bundles of points every single week. So for me, it's definitely the Green Bay Packers. Tip of the cap and respect to Aaron Rodgers for making it work with not very many weapons. Corbin, what is your thought on the best undefeated team remaining?
The Packers have been very impressive, like you mentioned, offensively. It seems like they're averaging just under 40 points a game through their first 4 games. Their defense has left some to be desired in a couple games. They gave up 34 points against the Vikings, 30 points against the Saints. So I guess at the end, it doesn't really matter when you're scoring 40 points a game and you have Aaron Rodgers that's just slinging it. As far as getting deeper into the season and then going into the postseason, though, I don't trust a defense that is that sporadic that can give up that many points, because all it takes is one bad game from Aaron Rodgers and then you're done. I'm going to fall on the Titans right now just because I'll take a great defense over a great offense. What the Packers are doing is very, very impressive, and I'm not trying to discredit them. But I feel like as a whole, the consistency of the Titans is better than the consistency of the Packers. But again, like you mentioned, the Packers doing this without their star stud receiver, Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Rodgers just kind of finding a way is pretty damn impressive. But for now, I'll give that nod to the Titans, especially with the Titans coming off and knocking off another undefeated team in the Bills. So I'll ride the hot hand there with the Titans. As far as week 6 goes, coming up here for the next week of the NFL season, there's a few featured games that kind of have people salivating over if you're an NFL fan. Koenig, of these 3 games, which game has you most intrigued? We have the 4-1 Kansas City Chiefs versus the 4-1 Buffalo Bills, both teams coming off of a loss. We've got the 4-0 Packers, your Aaron Rodgers boys, versus your boy Tom Brady and the 3-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And surprisingly, we've got the 4-1 Cleveland Browns. Yes, you heard that right. The 4-1 Cleveland Browns against the undefeated Steelers for potential first place in the AFC North. Which game do you like the best?
First of all, I'd just like to say that I think all of those games are going to be great. I think this is a great week for football. If you're a football fan, I'm going to be glued to my couch watching all of these games.
Hell yes.
But for me, it's the Packers and the Buccaneers. I think anytime you have 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of our generation kind of going toe-to-toe, that's must-see TV, in my opinion. This will be only the 3rd ever meeting between Rodgers and Brady, and they've split. So Aaron Rodgers won in Lambeau in 2014, and Tom Brady won in Foxborough in 2018 with the Patriots. So this will only be the 3rd time these quarterbacks meet. And some people say, all of the experts on Twitter say that it's 1A and 1B. Who would you rather have? Would you rather have Brady? Would you rather have Rodgers? And honestly, they're both fantastic. I'm biased. I still prefer Brady, obviously. But without a doubt, growing up over the last several years, this has been the conversation between Brady, Rodgers, Breeze, those types. And so when you have those 2 quarterbacks going to head, I really think that that's the matchup to watch and to see like who outduels the other. I think that'll be really interesting. Corbin, what are your thoughts on week 6?
Yeah, that's my featured game as well, the Packers and the Bucs, and not necessarily for the quarterback matchup. I'm mostly focused on the fact that if the Bucs lose, then I think that, they're 3-3, they're 500. Where does that team go? Do they rebound and kind of get it together? 3-3, that's just kind of like limbo, right? Like you just don't know how good or bad a team is. There's a lot of expectations with this Tampa Bay team. There's people saying they're the favorite in betting to win the Super Bowl before the season even started. And now you've got a team that's potentially trending to not make the playoffs. So I want to watch it for that aspect to see, okay, can the Buccaneers beat a team like the Packers who have been very good? Can they slow down that Packers offense? And also, can the Buccaneers put up points against that Packers defense, which has been susceptible to points in previous weeks? So, like you mentioned, those 3 games there are all going to be awesome to watch and tune into, but I think the Packers-Bucs is the most interesting in my eyes. One last bit of news in the NFL before we move on to our college football segment. The New York Jets just seem to just continue to get it wrong, and I'll try to keep this short because everybody knows my opinion on the Jets. They're terrible, and I'm a Jets fan. But they decided to release their star running back, Le'Veon Bell, today, and he is still owed $6 million by the team, so he's going to still be getting paid on his way out of the door. Essentially, he's setting himself up to go to whatever team he wants to because he can essentially sign wherever he wants to and get paid league minimum because he's still going to get paid that additional $6 million from the Jets. So apparently the Jets were shopping this guy even back in last season. Nobody wanted him because they didn't want to take on his contract because the Jets gave him way too much money. And again, this year, they tried to shop him around earlier this week, and nobody wanted to take him to the point where they just cut him because they had really no other options. And apparently, if you're a disgruntled player in the NFL, that's enough to get released and get paid $6 million on your contract. People are freaking out. I honestly think that the Jets are trying to lose. I think my prediction is they're going to try to go 0-16. They're going to hopefully get the number 1 pick. They're going to draft Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson, and they're going to try to get whatever they can for Sam Darnold. Kind of the Cardinals of 2 years ago when they drafted Josh Rosen, first round. They didn't have a good season. They were so bad they got the first overall pick, ended up drafting Kyler Murray. I think it's almost an identical situation. And obviously, Case is not going to be back. It's a miracle he hasn't been fired yet, but I honestly think management is just like, no, this is the guy that'll make us go 0-16. The team does not play for him. The team is just absolutely atrocious. So I think it's all just like a masterful plan for them to be terrible and kind of mask it, if you will. Koenig, your thoughts?
Yeah, just really briefly about the Le'Veon Bell situation. I saw something on Twitter the other day because for me, it's like I'm dialed in on what's going on in the AFC East, but like sometimes you forget and you don't think about things as analytically as maybe some other people who get paid a lot more money to think about these things analytically. Le'Veon Bell plays 17 games for the Jets. He gets paid $27 million to play those 17 games, and of those 17 games, he has 0 100-yard games. And it kind of blows my mind. And I'm sitting here thinking about the success of Le'Veon Bell, and when I'm saying the success, I mean his success with the Steelers. And I'm saying how much of that was having the best offensive line in the NFL, and how much of that was raw ability. And maybe it's both, right? Maybe it's both. Running behind the best offensive line in the entire league and mixing that with your fantastic natural God-given ability makes for all of those crazy numbers that we saw Le'Veon Bell getting, right? And then you put him with the Jets, who don't necessarily have the greatest offensive line. He has to create plays for himself more so than the offensive line creating the gaps and the holes for him. And so I think maybe that was the difference in New York. As far as where he could go, like you said, he could go anywhere he wants to go and get his league minimum.
I want to add to what you were saying there because you were mentioning the offensive line in Pittsburgh and him having, obviously, he was a tremendous talent when he was in Pittsburgh. I think that this is 100% all money based. Here's a guy who held out for an entire year because the Steelers wouldn't give him a long-term deal. And that was his MO from the get-go was, I want to get paid. I've put up big numbers in this league. I'm a running back. My shelf life is short, but I'm at the peak of my career right now. If you're not going to pay me now, then why should I play? I want to get paid. It's no secret that the Jets at the time, even when he signed, were terrible. Their offensive line was garbage. It's not like that was a shock to Le'Veon Bell. It's not like Le'Veon was just like, oh, well, you know what? Like, I think I can have success in this Jets offense. Like, no. The Jets were the team that was dumb enough to pay him the most money. That's the only reason he went to New York. That's the only reason any player would go to New York right now is because they'll pay too much for players because they have to. Because who the hell wants to play in New York right now when they're so god-awful, right? As soon as he got paid, he was a different player. And you know what? Shame on the Jets for not seeing that. Again, this was this guy's MO from the get-go. I want to get paid. I want to get paid. I want to get paid. And here's a player that had not played one down for the Jets. So, like, yes, he has all the success in Pittsburgh, but he hasn't done any of that for your organization. What do the Jets do? Oh, let's push tens of millions of dollars at this guy because of former success that he's had. Oh, by the way, he hasn't played in an entire year, so who knows how much rust this guy has. And you know what, dude? The guy just cashed a paycheck, and I don't want to say that he mailed it in for the Jets, but he mailed it in for the Jets, dude. Yes, the offensive line is terrible, but you could just see it, man. There was just not the effort and the explosiveness. He wasn't trying to run through tackles. He'd go down on first contact. It's pretty much just a guy saying, like, okay, I'm going to play well enough to not get cut, to still get paid. I mean, he got guaranteed money in that contract, so he got guaranteed millions of dollars no matter what. But anyways, we'll go ahead. We'll get away from that. I don't mean for this to be a Jet segment, but it is relevant in the NFL today, and Le'Veon Bell is a star. Well, former star. So we'll get away from that. We'll go into our college football segment here. Just want to note on a couple games that had happened in Week 6 of the college football season. The upset of the week, we had number 21 Texas A&M knocking off number 4 Florida 41-38 in College Station in Texas. This is a surprise for many, but I feel like people forget that Jimbo Fisher is the coach in Texas A&M, the very successful Florida State coach who won a national championship and is slowly turning that Texas A&M program around. I feel like Florida is always that team that has a lot of hype, that gets into that top 10, approaches that top 5, gets into that top 5, and then they lay an egg. And this was just one of those eggs that Florida always just kind of seems to lay recently. Koenig, did you have any initial thoughts on that upset? Are you surprised, or is this just kind of college football being college football?
I feel like the unpredictability of college football this year is probably the most it's ever been, right? In terms of anybody could beat anybody any given Saturday. And in large part, I think due to the fact that I don't necessarily think that the student athletes got a full offseason training program to kind of prepare for the season. And I think it shows in some of these games. And if you just look at some of these results from week 6, I'm looking at it right now. Clemson, Miami, Clemson scores 42 points. Okay. You have Alabama and Ole Miss, 63-48. You got Georgia and Tennessee, 44-21. A&M beat Florida, like you said, 41-38.
Yeah, and a lot of these games are SEC matchups, which everybody every year always raves about how stellar SEC defenses are and how hard it is to score points in the SEC, but clearly not so far.
Yeah, exactly. And Notre Dame, 42 points, and Florida State scores 26. You got North Carolina, who scored 56 points, and Virginia Tech scored 45. And so you're just looking, and then you have the Red River rivalry. You have 53 for Oklahoma to Texas's 45, and I know we'll get to that in just a second. But
we'll get to that.
But it goes back to what I was saying in terms of I don't necessarily think that the defenses are totally up to speed with the offense, and it could take several more weeks before that happens because when you're dealing with college athletes, right, it's going to take them a lot longer to try to pick things up than maybe a professional athlete would. And so I think you're going to continue to see this for the next several weeks is these huge score lines. It feels like nobody plays any defense, or at least they're not stopping the other team from scoring very well. Consistently, teams are scoring 40-plus points a week. And even in these marquee matchups, like Corbin was saying in the SEC, games that we've seen in the past where teams would win 13-3 or 13-10, right? And now this year you got 63-48. Like, what the hell is going on?
It's been wild. I mean, it's kind of the trend in football in general. It's just people want to see points scored. And I don't know if there's just a lack of attention on defenses. But like you mentioned, there's definitely the factor of the preparation, which a lot of these schools just haven't had their actual spring camp and camps right before the fall season. And you're just seeing these defenses just getting torched. It's like they're playing like flag football out there. I mean, they're just gripping and ripping it. I did want to get to the Red River rivalry. Number 22, Texas Longhorns and the OU Sooners. And if you listen to our last episode, you'll know that I think both of these teams suck. And it's really sad because this used to be a game when I was a kid that was just so hyped. And it was a good game, like if you were able to watch this game, you would watch it, not even being a Texas or an Oklahoma fan.
Yeah.
It was just a big game in college football, and it just had national interest. And now it's just, especially this year, both these teams, the media is just trying to like polish a turd with both of these teams. They're like, oh, yeah, come watch the number 22 Texas Longhorns and Oklahoma Sooners. Here's the Texas Longhorns, who had just previously lost to TCU, which is a team they should never lose to. They should have lost against their matchup against Texas Tech. They were losing by 15 points with 3 minutes left, and somehow Texas Tech choked that game away to where Texas won. So they should have 2 losses. Oklahoma, before this game, did have 2 losses. They lost to Kansas State, who lost to a Sun Belt team. And then they lost to Iowa State, who also lost to a Sun Belt team. So you've got these teams that the media is trying to paint as like, oh, these big powerhouses, Big 12 matchup. And then they come out and there's just no defense. It's just like, you know what? Like, why even play tackle football? Let's just play 2-hand touch and put some flags on these kids or something. Here's OU, which I think is the better team, not by a lot, but is the better team, who blows a 14-point lead with 3 minutes left, the mark of a good team, right? You have a 2-touchdown lead with 3 minutes left. They blow that. The game goes to overtime. They get through 2 overtimes, still tied. They go into the 3rd overtime, and Oklahoma blocks Texas's field goal attempt. So now all Oklahoma has to do is kick a field goal to win the game, right? So OU gets within, I mean, it's like a chip shot, right? It's like a 25, 30-yard field goal, and the fucking kicker shanks it wide left. You're just like, oh my God, like, can you just fucking end this misery, right? There's no defense being played. The special teams is terrible. You got a block kick followed by a missed field goal. Then Oklahoma gets the ball back, and the fourth overtime scores a touchdown, converts the 2-point conversion because, again, there's no defense being played. And then Texas and Sam Ehlinger, the quarterback for Texas, throws an interception literally directly to the defense. It's the only way that there was going to be a turnover in this game is if you throw it directly to the player. So Oklahoma ends up winning 53-45. And, you got all these people that are like, oh, that was so exciting. That was so wonderful. And it's like, no, dude, this is terrible football. When there's almost 100 points scored in a game, that's not good football. But going into this next week, we do have a premier matchup to look out for. We've got number 2, Alabama versus number 3, Georgia in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The key note is Nick Saban has contracted coronavirus, so he's not going to be coaching in that game. So we'll see what's going to happen. Koenig, do you have interest in watching this game, number 2 versus number 3, Alabama, Georgia?
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting matchup. I personally think that Alabama's going to win. I think they're going to win big, too. I wouldn't be surprised to see a really lopsided score, especially with the way that college football has been going this year. No one's playing a lick of defense. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see Alabama hang 30, 40 points on Georgia. So I will take Alabama going into that game. I will say it will be interesting to see what happens with Nick Saban going in because, yes, he has contracted the coronavirus, and he's so surprised by it, too. And I'm like, dude, you're surrounded by a bunch of young men that are probably going out and doing a bunch of stupid shit. Like, yeah, of course you're going to get it, right?
Oh, I don't know how I got coronavirus. We've only had 2 home games with like 30,000 people, and I'm around 100 players and staff constantly. I don't know how I got it. Like,
yeah.
Spare me, dude.
Yeah, me neither, Saban. So
yeah, we'll see how that shapes out. We'll have more coverage on that on next week's episode. Moving right along, we want to go into everybody's favorite segment, which is the unknown. The unknown. The unknown. This week, I am in control of the unknown, so we're going to be putting Koenig through the gauntlet. Today, it is going to be an NFL theme. We'll stick with football. Just, basketball season's over. Major League Baseball season is essentially winding down. So before you know it, it's just going to be football related. So might as well stick with that theme. Today's title of the unknown is called First or Worst. And not that these options are worst, but I just really couldn't think of anything that rhymed as well as first and worst. Essentially, what's going to happen is I have 10 players that are either currently playing in the NFL or have recently played in the NFL. All well-known players. You'll know every single player who I mentioned on this list. All you have to tell me is, were they drafted in the first round of the NFL draft or not?
Oh.
So that's all you have to do. You just have to tell me, yes, they were drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, or no, they were not.
Okay.
And I think in this scenario, I think 5 would be a push. I think if you can get 6, I would owe a drink. And since we're doing a special Wednesday episode and we're not trying to get too turnt tonight, we'll push this to next week's episode. So I'll do a shot or you'll do a shot right when the episode starts next week.
Okay.
So if you get 6, I'll owe a shot. If you get 5, we push, we both do a shot. If you get 4 or less, then you do a shot.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay. Are you ready for your first player?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your first player, were they drafted in the first round or not? Teddy Bridgewater.
So Teddy Bridgewater out of Louisville. A lot of hype out of him, too.
So what's crazy is Teddy Bridgewater out of Louisville, the year before he came out, everybody was saying that he was going to be like a top 5 pick. And not that he had a poor final season at Louisville, but it left some to be desired. Like, there were definitely flaws in his game that people had poked holes in. So he did fall.
Yeah.
But was he still drafted in the first round?
I honestly don't even remember who he was drafted by. I want to say it was the Vikings. He started his career in Minnesota. I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say he was a first round pick. Final answer.
You're gonna say yes. Final answer.
Yes, sir.
That is correct.
Hey.
He was
All
the
right.
final pick in the first round in
Oh, shit.
2014. So he was drafted 32 overall.
Oof.
So good on you. So you're 1 for 1.
All
Are you
right.
ready for your second player?
Yes, let's go.
All right. Your second player is the stellar wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins.
Ooh.
Now, I will say this. The same draft class, Sammy Watkins, his teammate at Clemson came out,
Yes.
and Sammy Watkins got drafted higher than he did. But
Right.
again, was ya boy, Andre Hopkins drafted in the first round.
It's hard for me to believe that a player like Hopkins wasn't drafted in the first round. He's so good. He was so good at Clemson, too.
Yeah. Perhaps.
I'll say yes. I'll say DeAndre Hopkins been in the league for 5-6 seasons now, something like that.
It was drafted in 2013.
Oh, so 7 seasons. Jesus. Yeah, I'll stick with my gut. I'll say yes. First round pick. Final answer.
Yes, first round pick. That is correct. He was drafted in the first round. Number 27 overall, like you mentioned, by the Houston Texans. So good on ya.
All these are really late in the first round.
Are you ready for player number 3?
Yes, sir.
All right. This future Hall of Fame quarterback, was he drafted in the first round? Yes or no? A Mr. Drew Brees.
So Drew Brees out of Purdue.
Yes, sir.
The Boilermakers. I feel like Drew Brees is always one of those guys that analysts on ESPN are like, oh, can you believe it that this guy that wasn't drafted in the first round went on to be so good, right?
Maybe.
Was he drafted in the first round? He was drafted by the Chargers. I know that.
Yes, sir.
And then they made the mistake of giving up on him.
Where he was drafted, they were surprised because of how big he was, and that was a concern for a lot of people.
Right. They didn't think he could throw it over the line, basically. I remember that. I'm going to say not a first-round pick, though. I think I remember like listening to Primetime Football Game where like the announcers are making a big deal that he didn't go in the first round, so...
Final answer?
Yeah, final answer.
So you're saying not in the first round?
No.
Well, he was drafted number 32 overall.
Oh, shit.
But the Houston Texans were not a team yet, so he was drafted in the second round. He was the first pick in the second round.
Oh, I got swerved. Hell yes.
Shit. Okay, well, you're 3 for 3, so damn. I was really hoping that you were going to get that one wrong, but yeah, he was the first pick in the second round, so
all right.
Yeah, good pick in there. Are you ready for player number 4?
Yes.
All right. I think this guy's already a Hall of Famer. If not, he for sure is going to be. One of the most feared safeties in the game, a Mr. Ed Reed of the Baltimore Ravens. Was Ed Reed a first-round pick? Coming out of the U.
Yeah.
It's all about the U.
I think he played his whole career in Baltimore.
Yeah, I don't remember him.
Unless maybe late in his career, maybe he played somewhere else.
I don't know why or how, but the Texans is popping into my head, but I don't know if that's true or not. I feel like he's a lifer.
Didn't he play for the Jets? No, he did play for the Jets.
Oh, he played for both those teams. He played for Houston and the Jets. Okay, so both in 2013. So he left the Texans, went to the Jets, but he played, obviously, the majority of his career in Baltimore.
Right. A little bit of a smaller safety.
Yeah, and that was a concern for teams drafting him. Like, he could hit really hard, but they were like, okay, well, can he hit these NFL players consistently like that and hold up?
Right. Ed Reed, a little bit smaller. I'm going to say not a first-round pick.
Not a first-round pick?
Yes, sir.
Final answer?
Yeah, I'm not confident about it, but I want to say he was like early second round.
Ed Reed was a first round pick. He
Ugh.
was drafted number 24 overall. So it was
Oh,
a little
wow.
bit later in the first round. But you had the right frame of mind, though. A lot of teams were skeptical of his size for the next level, but the Ravens obviously took a chance on him, and the rest was history.
Yeah, damn. One of the best safeties ever.
Okay, you're still 3 for 4. You're still in plenty good shape. You've got 6 remaining. Are you ready for your next player?
Yes.
All right. This, I guess you could call him controversial. Either you love him or you hate him.
Oh, God.
A star receiver and return man. Was he drafted in the first round? A Mr. Deshaun Jackson.
Mm.
Coming out of Cal to, I believe, the Philadelphia Eagles drafted him. And then jumped around. He's actually still on the Philadelphia Eagles, actually. But he went to the Redskins for a little bit, and I want to say one other team, but you know who I'm talking about. Deshaun Jackson.
Deshaun Action Jackson?
Yeah, there you go. I will say this while you're thinking about this. I was able to see this guy play because he played at Cal. So I was able to see him play in person when they would come play ASU. And he was one of the most electrifying players that I had ever seen. And this dude, I think they list him as 5'10", maybe. The dude's probably 5'9", maybe. And he's a pixie stick. He's got no mass to him.
Right.
He's just like a walking skeleton out there. But oh my God, the dude was so elusive and could change the game in an instant. Whether it was receiving the ball or returning a kick or returning a punt, he was just an absolute game changer.
I'm pretty sure when you said Deshaun Jackson, my first instinct was no, definitely not. And then you talk about how good he was. I didn't see him play, but
you also have to imagine or picture this too. He was a total stud, but he was also undersized. So that could factor into your decision. Maybe teams were like, oh, we don't want to spend a first round pick on this guy because he's undersized.
He's not built, right?
But there's actually a really famous Sports Illustrated cover of him when the season had just barely started, his last year at Cal. And Cal started off undefeated, and there was a lot of hype around Cal. And they were like, Heisman Trophy winner, ? And they had him on the cover.
Oh,
wow. The very next game, they came to ASU and played ASU, and then ASU beat them. And that pretty much negated all the national championships.
Oh, man. I'm going to stick with my gut on Deshaun Jackson. I'm going to say not a first-round pick.
Not a first-round pick? Final answer.
Yes, sir.
That is correct. He was not a first-round pick. He was actually picked 49th overall. So he was about the middle of the second round. Teams were hesitant based on his size. They didn't know durability, if he'd be able to last. But such a talent that, hell, I mean, even a second-round pick, that's very impressive. So,
for sure.
Damn, you are 4 for 5. So you got to get one more to push, 2 more to win, and you've got 5 remaining.
Excellent.
Are you ready for your next player?
Yes, sir.
All right. This next player was a quarterback, still playing in the league. Actually took over for an injured quarterback this last week. From TCU, the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton. I mean, he was the starter, and pretty much when Carson Palmer left town, he was the starter for, God, it seemed like a decade, didn't it? It seemed like he was there forever.
Yeah. Andy Dalton, TCU. That was when TCU was, I think, still in the Mountain West, I want to say.
Yeah, but they were rolling teams.
Oh, yeah.
That era of TCU pretty much catapulted them into the Big 12.
Right.
They were like, look, we're fucking crushing these teams in the Mountain West. We need some better opponents.
Right. I'll stick with, there's no way. I'm going to say no, not a first round pick.
Andy Dalton, not a first round pick? Are you sure?
No, but it's getting late, so I'll go with it.
All right, final answer.
Yes, sir.
That is correct. He was not a first-round pick, although he was the 3rd pick in the 2nd round. So he was very close to the first round, but he was not a first-round pick. So you've got the push locked in. You just need one of these other 4 in order to win. Are you ready for your next player?
Yes.
Okay. This next player is, when he's healthy, a very, very good receiver in the NFL. Some would say he is one of the best receivers in the league. From the Green Bay Packers, Davante Adams. was Devontae Adams a first-round pick? He is also a Mountain West boy
Sure is.
from Fresno State,
Ugh,
the Bulldogs.
fuck him. I feel like the conference has a lot to do with his pick.
You never know, though. I mean, that's your first instinct, right? Like, oh, it's a lesser conference. How could they possibly be a first-round pick? But then you got players like Carson Wentz who played in FCS that were number 2 overall. So
Yeah,
you just never know.
That's true. 2014.
I will say that when the Packers drafted this guy as high as they did, which could be the first round or not, I remember saying to myself, who? And then it actually took him a couple years to kind of find his footing in the NFL. His first couple years wasn't too impressive, but then pretty much once Jordy Nelson was kind of getting phased out and Randall Cobb was getting phased out of that offense, he really came into his own. And it was like, okay, damn, like this guy is a really good player.
I'm going to say not a first-round pick.
Final answer.
Going with my gut. Final answer.
That is correct. He was not a first-round pick. He was picked in the second round, 53 overall. So kind of toward the back of the second round.
Yeah.
Still impressive. Okay, so you have locked this up. You've gotten 6 out of 7. You've already won the bet. We've got 3 more, so we're just going to gunsling this one here. We're going to go through these last 3 real quick, okay? Okay. Your next player is TJ Watt.
I'll say he was a first-round pick.
Final answer?
Yeah.
That is correct. He was the 30th overall pick, so just kind of squeaked into the first round, but first rounder nonetheless. Damn. Okay, well, see, for future reference, I'm not going to do NFL because I feel like you've just got a nose for the NFL. So I feel like I threw you a bone this week, but that's okay because the
NFL is probably the sport I follow the closest.
Well, and that's the thing is I don't want to give you something that you've got no clue on because then I feel like it's like not really fun, So that's okay. All right, next player.
That's what these tests are for.
Next player, are you ready?
Yep, let's go.
Okay, I wouldn't really consider him a stud now, but he used to be an absolute stud when he played for the Saints. This tight end out of Miami, Jimmy Graham.
I'll say not a first-round pick.
Oh, any reasoning behind that?
Just a guess. I honestly am not sure. I'm honestly not sure.
All right, not a first-round pick. Final answer.
Yes, sir.
That is correct. He actually was a third-round pick, if you can believe that. Number 95 overall, a third-round pick.
Dang.
God damn. Okay, so you're 8 for 9. Jesus. The only player that you didn't get was Ed Reed, and I don't blame you because he got drafted 18 years ago. So the fact that you didn't know that, that's whatever.
I was 13 years old then.
Okay, this next player is kind of an old soul, but he's still playing football right now, miraculously. This stud running back, also from the U. I didn't really mean to pick all these Miami players. It just happened. He used to be an absolute monster when he played for the 49ers. He's kind of bounced around since then. But was a Mr. Frank Gore a first-round pick?
No.
Frank Gore.
I don't think he was. He's been in the league forever. He's been in for 17 years or something like that?
I think this is his 16th season,
Jesus.
Which is absolutely remarkable for a running back in the NFL. And he's been a featured back. It's not like he's been like a backup hit most of his career. Like he's been more or less the guy until recently. Recently, he's been more of a lesser role.
Well, and he's been like a bruiser back too. He's been a lot of contact on him.
Oh, yeah. He's been, I'm going to run through you, not around you, for sure.
Yeah. I'll trust my gut on this one. I'll say not a first-round pick.
Final answer.
Yes, sir.
That is correct. Damn. So he was actually the 65th overall pick.
Oh, wow.
So he was the first pick in the third round in 2005. So, damn. Dude, you got 9 out of 10. Shit. I thought that was going to be a lot harder. Than it was.
It's a little bit misleading because there were probably 3 or 4 of those that I was super not confident about, and I just kind of took an educated guess.
Fair enough.
And had I guessed incorrectly, it might have been more interesting there near the end. But no, that's still really good.
I will say that as far as with me, obviously I looked up all these answers to fact check. I would have known. I think I would have known 6 or 7 of these. So that's kind of where I put that bar. I thought 6 would have been a good judgment. There was, especially players, I thought the ones that would trip you up were the ones that were a little bit older, like the Frank Gore, the Ed Reed, the Drew Brees, and even like the Jimmy Graham for that matter. That might trip you up, but damn, dude, pretty fucking good.
There you go. So before we sign off tonight, as always, we do like to give our drink reviews. So I'll start on my end. I had the Ziggy Zoggy Summer Lager out of Silver City Brewery. And I'm a pretty big fan of lagers. You know, lagers, pilsners, that's typically the lane that I try to stay in when it comes to beers. I wanted to keep it something I've had in the past, especially the night before I go back to work. I don't want something that's going to hit me a lot harder than I think it is. So I had a couple of these during tonight's show. Not bad. I wouldn't say it's my favorite lager by any stretch, but it's nice, it's light, it's refreshing. It did the trick. It got me a little buzz going. I'll give it a 3.7 out of 5 stars.
Oh, very nice, very nice. And then on my end here, as mentioned previously, I had the Michelob Ultra Pure Gold, an organic light lager, 2.5 carbs, 85 calories. So obviously geared more toward people who want to drink beer, but they don't want to drink something that's super heavy or really heavy in calories. For what it is, I actually think it's really good. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. And now, again, for what it is, this is supposed to be a light lager with low carbs, low calories. As far as taste go, it's not going to blow your mind as far as taste goes, but it's really, really easy to drink. In general, I'm a fan of Michelob Ultra. I think it tastes fine for what it is as far as like low calorie, low carb beer. But yeah, Michelob Ultra Pure Gold, I would give it a 4 out of 5. I was actually very impressed with it.
Excellent. I might have to try that next time I'm at the store. So that's all we have for you on this episode number 13, lucky number 13, a special edition Wednesday night episode with the boys. But we will have a whole lot more coming in our future episodes. We will wrap up the Major League Baseball Championship Series. I'm sure we'll have some more to say about the World Series next week. We will have more football. I'm sure we'll have some more college football for you. We're kind of getting into the slim pickings on the sports as some of these seasons are wrapping up. And so I think
don't worry, people. We got Sheffield United playing this Sunday at 4 a.m. So
there you go.
Get ready for some Premier League.
We'll be pulling an all-nighter on Saturday so we can watch soccer at 4 a.m.
Oh,
but
God.
Once these seasons start wrapping up, the NBA is wrapped up now. NHL wrapped up a couple weeks ago. You have baseball wrapping up here in the next couple weeks. We're really going to be pulling strings for some topics. So if you have any topics for us, feel free to email those to slightlysidewayspod@gmail.com. If you're not already, join the community on Twitter. You can find our page at Slightly Sideway. We'd love to hear from you on there. Any thoughts you have about our show. If you're on YouTube, if you're watching the video, if you're enjoying the content that we're giving for you guys, feel free to give it the thumbs up. Subscribe while you're at it so you can never miss a single episode of your favorite content on the internet. As for us, we're going to go get some fucking sleep. But before we do, say goodnight to the people, Corbin.
For all my Swedes out there, good morning, and I hope you have a great day.
Good night, everyone.